good to finally get out for the first day. It's been a long wait. Having walkthroughs is a big difference in having practice. So finally got out there. Got a lot of work to do. Having missed spring practice and just watching guys and them getting used to how we practice and what our expectations and standards are. And so we were out there, but we got a long ways to go.
All right, who has a question? All right, we'll start with Parrish Alford.
All right, Lane, this being a different time, is there a number you guys have in terms of positive case counts in which you say, okay, when we get here, we're going to take a step back. We might need to take a couple of days off. I mean, I know everybody has some cases that they manage, but is there a number where you look and say, we need to do something different?
Well, we lean on our medical staff on that. So we have not set an exact number. We like where we're at. So we'll just go day by day. And if it got to the point, that we need to talk about shutting down, then, we'll talk about it. But we're moving forward. And I just really listen to them. And that's not really my expertise.
All right, we'll go with James from the Daily Mississippian.
Last night, Eli Johnson announced that he was going to be opting out of the season. Do you have any comment or statement? Have you spoken to him about that at this time?
It's a nice setup. Where are you out there? Hunting?
I'm out working on an island in the Cape, Nantucket.
Nice.
Yeah.
Got everything you need there. Got a fridge there?
Yeah.
Yep. All right.
Yeah. Yep.
So I spoke with Eli. He made a decision, and we're fine with it. And told him that if he still wanted to be around, he was a big part of this team before, and so if he wanted to be around on nights before the games and meetings and stuff, and on the sidelines, be more than happy to do that. And we respect his decision.
All right, Nate, go ahead with your question.
I guess just logistically following up on that before my question, if he's around, would he still have to continue to go through the normal protocols and testing and all that stuff if he's going to stay around the team?
We hadn't even got there yet. I threw it out to him in our conversation and just told him to check back, in a week or two or something and see if that's something he'd be interested in.
Yeah. Well, I guess moving on from that, just were you guys as a staff in a program surprised in general when you saw the Big Ten, Pac-12 decisions, and just kind of the disconnect between where they're at and where the SEC seems to be at?
I was not. I'd heard a number of things that was going to happen. First the Pac-12 a while back, and then the Big Ten. So it really didn't come as a surprise. And I would have kind of guessed if you would have said what two conferences, those would have been the two that I would have guessed.
All right, Nick, go ahead with your question.
Lane, can you just kind of talk us through what's different about practice now with these new protocols and just kind of what a day in the life is now that you guys are kind of trying to get practice going, but also stay safe?
Yeah, I mean, there's things like, our team meeting, we had in the indoor, with whatever, 100 chairs out there, as opposed to having in the team room. There's nowhere to go. Like we get breaks in practice and can't go under tents and, like we used to cool down and things. So it's a little bit challenging, but like I told the players, all right, everybody wants a fast 40 time. Everybody wants to lift weights, get strong. All right. So they play better and so they can win games. Well, this is going to be more important than the shape you're in, how strong you are, how fast you are is, the teams that handle this the best. And the players that are the safest, those teams probably going to win a lot of games, because you could have some teams down significant players, especially when it comes to social distancing. If you don't handle that properly, all of a sudden a couple guys get it, and you shut down 20 guys for 2 weeks. What if that's your offensive line room? What do you do? So just really challenge them to nail this thing. When they're with us, they do great, but the challenge is when they're not with us.
All right, Ben, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, Lane, obviously with Eli going down, what are the options at center? Who all y'all looking at?
Well, we'll put it. Ben was in there today, but we'll look at a couple different guys and and move them around. This was last minute, so we didn't have a long time to prepare for it. It came as a surprise to us, so we'll work through it.
Go ahead, Nick.
Going off of that, are there any other players who you've heard talking about opting out, or is Eli kind of the only one on the radar right now?
I have not. I asked our assistants. No one's heard of it, and so he was the only one. And was a very big surprise, especially the eve of training camp. After all this summer work and workouts and walkthroughs and all those things. So it was a surprise.
All right, Nate, go ahead.
With some of your positions like quarterback, especially where there's kind of a lot of competition, a lot of battles, do you guys feel like you have to make a decision quicker in a kind of advanced, accelerated off-season training camp?
We don't ever put deadlines on those things, because they answer themselves sometimes in a couple of days. They answer not till a couple of weeks into a season sometimes. So we don't put deadlines because I think you're forced to make a decision. Sometimes it's a wrong decision, especially having missed spring ball. So I would think they'd be a little bit later.
I guess just in general on the quarterbacks, how are you kind of evaluating the snaps going into this week between those guys?
They split snaps today with the ones and twos, so very, very even snaps to start.
When you say they, was that Matt and John Rice?
Yes.
Is there any other questions? Nick, go ahead.
Do you have an update at all on Sam Williams' status?
I do not. He's not here. That's all I got for you.
With his absence, which guys are you kind of evaluating at that edge position?
Again, moving people around and we play a couple different fronts. So he was going to be utilized differently in the two different fronts. So it'll be a collection of people.
All right, Ellie French, go ahead.
Hey, Coach. With today being the start of fall camp and also happening to be the day where your guys' schedule is going to be announced, just kind of what was the team's thoughts on just the excitement with that and being able to really sort of dive into camp and also figuring out today what your guys' schedule is going to look like this season?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't ask them. We're too focused on today, and that really, those are things down the road. We try to teach them to really worry about the process, what we're in, day by day, and not worry about that. That's so far away. We barely, line up in a formation right now, let alone worry about who we're playing first. We know what 10 we're playing, so really don't matter what order they come.
All right, Neil. Hold on, Neil. You're muted.
Lane, is the way you incorporate contact later in the week, will that be different than the way you would normally do it in a typical year, or is it you'd have to do some things differently this time?
Well, we're looking at that part. Really, the only difference is just shorter racks of plays. So maybe you'd go 8 plays, so you're longer, in the same spots. Maybe going shorter. Like today, we did 4 plays, in the team, and then switched. So just probably same amount of reps, but just more groups, more sets within the reps, if that makes sense.
All right, Joseph Goodman.
Yeah, Lane, hey, I was wondering how you guys are managing so much uncertainty right now, just as football coaches. The profession is based so much around organization, and there are a lot of things that you just can't control. just wondering if you could touch on that, and also maybe what you've been telling your players about going out and keeping them inside the semi-bubble, so to speak.
Well, on the second part there, like I said, to them that I hope made sense to them is, this will have as much to do with winning as anything. What teams handle this the best and don't get, obviously don't get corona, but also when that happens, don't get, contact traced, where you weren't doing the right things. Now you're shut down for 2 weeks, even though you don't have it, so and that's a big challenge to them because I don't think it really happens. Everybody can pretend it happens away from here, but they got to go out of their way to do it because other kids aren't doing it. I mean, and adults drive through downtown, so it's a big challenge for them.
Parrish, go ahead.
When you talk about reps for your quarterbacks, how many are you repping right now? Seriously, are you repping 4 or 5, or how many are you working?
Well, all 5 get some work, at some point. Like I said, the first 2 guys were equal, and then Tisdale and Denton Renfro, all have been getting reps.
David, go ahead.
Lane, not a fall camp question, but just a question on recruiting in general. Can you kind of talk a little bit about the challenges that you guys are facing on the recruiting trail when it comes to the on-campus visit moratorium and you guys not being able to go out?
Yeah, David. I mean, I like to be positive, like you heard me say. I don't know how you drop a more difficult setup. You're trying to recruit kids that can't come see you, can't come see, you can't take around, and we just got here. So it's not like, we've been recruiting these kids for 2 years, or if we were at another SEC school and came, we'd have relationships. We don't know these kids at all. And so, and if this thing keeps staying shut down, who's to say it's not going to go all the way to signing day? So now you're going to sign a class of kids that most of them you've never met. They've never met you, and you haven't been able to evaluate them football wise or who they are. That's a big part of unofficial and official visits, is evaluating who the kid is, not just what's on tape. That's why the NFL spends so much time and money, in investing in the research. So very, very difficult.
Go ahead, Nick.
Lane, is there anybody who can't practice right now, whether because of injury or because they are currently in quarantine?
I don't know that I'm going to really get into that. I don't even think I'm allowed to get into that. On the quarantine part. So I got nothing for you there on it.
Is there any more questions for Coach? All right, Parrish, go ahead.
Yeah, Lane, you obviously picked up a couple of transfers from the Canadian schools that may be able to help you. Is this an awareness that you've had with those players in Canada, or is this something that's been heightened because of the circumstances, the shutdown and everything? Could you just talk about your relationship in getting those guys?
Well, like we said when we saved some spots, we didn't want to reach, in the first year, and that basically 1 month we had whatever to sign kids. So that was why, whether it's, transfers coming in from other colleges or wherever they are, we're looking everywhere and, have found kids in different areas and glad we had spots for them to get in, and whether they're eligible this year or whether they're not, if they're sitting here redshirting, that's of great value. They're learning your systems, they're in your weight program. And then, so, they're that much better a year from now, instead of, maybe taking a JC kid in that slot. Now you got a kid already that maybe has, 2-3 years left, but he's already been here for a year.
All right, James, go ahead with your question.
I know that Coach Yo talked about seeing college students partying and such without masks. I know that you guys are on campus now. What is the general vibe around campus in terms of how it's affecting, your players and stuff like that? Are they kind of just sticking in the practice facility and not really leaving unless they have class and such? Or are they out and about around campus?
Well, I mean, we've challenged them. I think you got to be realistic. It's not going to be perfect. And like I said, I mean, you know, if people think people are doing this well, I mean, open your eyes. Just drive. And this ain't kids. I mean, adults don't do it. Just drive through downtown and look around, or look at pictures on the internet of other places. So this is not taken very, very serious by a lot of people, and especially by young people, you know, that are back at college and been sitting at their house, you know, with their parents for however many months. So I would not think, you know, it's going to, you know, you're going to get a lot of real low numbers in the student population here, you know, over the next month when they start testing. So it's just a challenge for our guys to do it right. And that is a challenge because they look around, they don't see it being done at all.
Go ahead, Nate.
Coach Parrish talked about transfers from Canada. Have there been any discussions about transfers from the Pac-12 or the Big Ten, those kids that aren't going to be playing this fall?
Yeah, I mean, we've just had a discussion to make sure that coaches knew where we stand in case we got calls on it and things like that, you know. But the issue is they're not giving guys immediate eligibility. And so, you know, at first we thought maybe, hey, if you got shut down, you know, NCAA would say, hey, if we're not going to let you play here, you know, if your conference or school is not going to let you play, then you can go immediately transfer and be eligible somewhere else. And they have come out to say that's not the case. You know, you're not going to win a waiver based off of that. So, you know, that changes it for a lot of kids, because unless you're a grad transfer, you can't, you know, you're going to have to come here and sit out, you know, and you're already sitting out where you're at. So I think that would have changed. You would have seen a lot if that would have happened, you know, where you could play immediately. Then I think you would have seen free agency.
Why do you think that they weren't allowing it? Like you said, I mean, your Canadian kids, they had their league canceled and the Big Ten's canceled. I mean, what's kind of the difference in their eyes there?
That's not my call. I don't understand that at all. You know, kid wants to play football. He's not allowed to play football at his school, his conference. Why you can't go somewhere else and play? I mean, how much sense does that make?
All right, Parrish, go ahead.
How many of you guys are taking online classes? Do you have a rough percentage there on their schedules?
I think at one point, you know, it was thrown out 80 to 90%. So, you know, I don't know if that's changed in the last week or so. That was last week when we were talking about it, that I believe most of the professors have gone that way.
All right, we'll wrap it up here with Ben Garrett.
Yeah, Lane, what's your first impression? I know it's really early, but your first impression of the overall talent and depth now that you've gotten them on the field?
I think probably what I said initially, just from, you know, watching some TV copies or a few games from last year. You know, there's some good young talent, especially on offense. You know, that class a year and two ago, especially a year ago, you know, has some really good potential, some potential of really good players. You know, but we got a lot of depth issues. You know, that's what usually happens when there's a job change. So there's a change for a reason. So, and that's become difficult to fix. And you know, the messed up recruiting cycle that's going on and everything, and having an early signing period versus not, so that when you did get hired, you know, in the old days, you know, you had until February to sign a class. So, you know, it's going to take some time, and that's why you see us looking at every avenue and every country there is for players.